Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. I'm your host, Thor Conklin, and today, coming from London, it's late in the evening. Thanks for joining us. Is Sachin Duggal. He's the founder and CEO of Builder, formerly Engineer.ia. I'm sorry, AI. That's right, Engineer.ai. That's right, a little dyslexic here. I actually found out that I was dyslexic around about 5 years ago at age 50. It was amazing. And then I heard that most billionaires are dyslexic. So I figured, hey, I was in good company. Builder is a platform that combines AI with crowdsourced teams of designers and developers to build a bespoke digital products for entrepreneurs and businesses. Last year, Sachin bootstrapped the company to $43 million in revenue across 500 customers globally. Before that, he actually exited a company for $100 million. Well done, man. Not everyone can accomplish those kind of numbers. What's the secret sauce?
So look, I think hard work and perseverance. Small corrections. We got to 60 million in aggregate revenue before we raised an outside round over the 4 years prior. And when we sold Nivio, we'd taken it to a peak valuation of 100 million, which in itself was an interesting journey. We were one of the first people in the cloud. But I guess to me, the learning lessons from building PCs when I was little to when I worked at Deutsche Bank, when we did Nivio, when we did our photo sharing app Shoto, and now at Builder, has been about really focusing on a North Star and a vision, and that really sets the tone and the focus. Hiring people that you trust, adore, and want to work with every day, and being ruthless in how you execute and set goals. You should be the friend that everyone wants to have. But you also need to be the teacher that everyone needs. And it's a really fine balance between the two.
You know, it's interesting. I've been working with a lot of my clients recently. I asked them this question, and it is, do you have the need to be liked by others? And of course, as humans, we always want to be liked, right? But the need to be liked. And what I find is those clients, it has nothing to do with success. Actually, you can be ruthlessly or ridiculously successful either way. But those individuals, those leaders that want to be liked, but they don't need to be liked, really know how to make those hard decisions, and they do the right thing. Like you said, the North Star, it's like, this is where we're going as an organization. You get the right team behind you, but sometimes you end up with the wrong team member. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there. It's difficult to let go of some of the players that may have even gotten you to one point, but aren't going to get you to the next level. And you've seen a tremendous amount of growth. Look, to run a $5 million company versus a $100 million company takes a different skill set. And it sounds like you were able to make those adjustments along the way because you knew exactly where you were going. Give some advice to the entrepreneur out there that realize they need to make some adjustments in their team. How do you do it? And how do you do it compassionately?
Right. I think, for me, it's been a huge learning lesson. If I remember in Nivio, we hired senior management very quickly. And, what I realized from that experience was that you can only expand your core at a certain rate. And what you end up doing is, if you imagine a company as a square, and then you imagine the core team as a triangle, like an isosceles triangle. What you find is the square expands at whatever rate you can hire. So imagine you're hiring at 10x, and I think we've added almost 100 people in the last 2 quarters. The center expands at 1/15th or 1/20th.
Mm.
And so what you end up doing is creating a larger gap between the core and the outside. And as an entrepreneur, the most important thing to understand is how do you maintain that balance? Because there's a need to execute, but there's also a need to expand the core. And at Nivio, we probably did it really badly, and that's where we realized how you're meant to fix it. We had continuous sets of issues, probably never-ending sets of issues. And I think a lot of it was we hired everybody that looked amazing on CVs, and they were amazing actually individuals themselves. But you didn't let the team form. In Builder, we did it very differently. We took our time. We built year on year. There's folks that have been here for 4 years, 5 years since the beginning. But there's also a lot of very new people. But because the core is quite tight, and we've expanded the core actually. We've had a bunch of new managers that have joined in and senior folks that have expanded the core. But because the core was quite solid and in place, and probably 2 decades ago, when I was at Deutsche Bank, I went to see this lady. She used to be called the healer of the city in sort of banking circles. And she always used to say to me, Sachin, you have to cement your leadership. And I never really understood it for about a decade. And as I started thinking about teams and how they grow and how they expand, to me, cementing your leadership is understanding where your pitfalls are, but also understanding how you are expanding in that space. And you never want to go past the natural rate at which a core team can expand. Because, and you see this all the time, right? Because you end up getting 3 or 4 types of people that you don't want. You get the one that wants your job. You get the second that's only in it for themselves. You get the third that's forever pondering. And you get the fourth that can be malicious. And all 4 are difficult. I think the ones that potentially do harm, you remove them as fast as possible. They're cancer. And the ones that need pondering, you handhold them through the journey. And I think that's really the approach you have to take. It's sort of depending on the cultural fit of the person to the org, not the skill set fix. Yeah. We've had folks, this is one of my colleagues, her name's Priyanka, and Priyanka started as an Android engineer. She then became a product manager. Then she became, for customers. Then she became the head of all product experts for our customers. And now she's become a senior product manager for one of our most important parts of our platform. And I look at her journey over the last 4 and a bit years. And that's, to me, someone that was such a strong cultural fit that she continues to grow. VC is the same. VC started off by just running and working with me in India when we were 10 people. We're 200 people now, and he runs our biggest region and tens of millions of dollars of revenue and probably millions of dollars of spend. and we maybe speak twice a week or 3 times a week. And when it works that well. But I think as an entrepreneur and as an owner of a business, the most important thing to understand is what's a fit.
Yeah.
And nothing will tell it to you more than your gut. And I think when you start questioning your gut because of all the advice you're getting, that's when you run the risk of making mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions I always ask is there anybody on my team that I would be relieved or happy if they quit on Monday? And I realized that if the answer is yes, for anyone, I've got the wrong person on the team. Either I'm not doing a good enough job as a leader in developing them, or it's just not a good cultural fit. And one of the most difficult things I find with organizations is you find that high performer, that superstar that can really just execute the hell out of things. But other than the skill and the execution and what they're bringing to the company, it's not a fit culturally. And we struggle with those, right? It's like, the guy's a superstar, she's a superstar, but it's a cancer to the organization. And those are the ones that are really tough, right? The low performers, low attitude, they're easy to get rid of. But those great superstars, they're tough. But if you don't do it, it starts to erode the entire organization.
Well, right, and look, I think we over-index a lot on cultural fit, and because we've had a pretty difficult experience with one such individual. Um, and Jack Welch had this index:
Yeah.
high commitment, low commitment, high intelligence, low intelligence. So the worst people to ever hire are high intelligence, low commitment, because they're in it with themselves, and they fall under that one of four categories of people that I mentioned. And irrespective of how fast you remove them, just be prepared that a wave or a tsunami might follow, and that's just the nature of doing it. I think one of the things I've also realized is that this index changes culturally. We operate in 4 markets, or actually 5 markets, maybe 6 markets, but we have offices in 4. And so when we have a discussion in Japan, and speak to Akira-san, it's like, just gets on with it. In India, it's a lot about how fast. In the UK, it's a lot about how much. And in the US, it's a genuine question about why. And when you're running an org that has sort of an equal distribution of people across them, culture is sort of really open to interpretation. So how do you continuously stitch your little population together so that everyone understands culture to be the same thing? Because you want whys, you want how muches, you want how fasts, and you want folks that just do it. And you have to find that equilibrium across all the offices.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I find too is that sometimes leaders struggle with having a well-balanced core team. We tend to like people around us that are like us, but when we have an organization built of nothing but us, we miss a whole sector, that voice of reason for the entrepreneur, that principle of accounting and finance and nuts and bolts. You really need a diverse crowd, and unless you bring all that together, that core team can be very unstable. And I love the analogy of the pyramid. A matter of fact, it's our logo, and we talk a lot about, if you start building things within the organization and you haven't built that strong foundation, you're just creating a structure that's going to fail one day. You've got to have that strong base, and nothing's stronger than a pyramid. So I love.
Right, and exactly, and it's a lot stronger than a square. And so I think that's where you end up with this. And then I would even go further as saying is your inner circle. So you have a circle inside a pyramid inside a square, and as you get closer and closer to the primary shape, it's a stronger shape in the world.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna use that. Thank you for that. One of the things that kind of shocked me when you said this, because I talk about this a lot. It seems like the entrepreneurial journey right now has turned into, all right, let me come up with an idea. Let me get it funded day one. Not only do you give up a lot of equity at a low valuation, but I think it's the idea of creating value and then going into the investor market to sell that value. You did it at 60 million. It seemed a little late in the process. Why at 60 million did you go, hey, now it's time to bring on some investors?
So look, I think again, 60 million is aggregate over 4 years. The year before our round, I think we reached about 23 million. My memory serves me correctly. I think it was because we didn't need the cash. We were profitable from the first couple of years in. We built a business that allowed us to get very effective working capital, and we wanted to get it right. Like we wanted the opportunity to think through it. But it was also not straightforward, because we were sort of on a meandering journey, trying to figure out what we wanted to do, trying to figure out what the pieces of the business model were. Now you look at it, it looks a lot slicker. I mean, we're just going through the new website, which is about to launch in a week. And I look at this and I giggle, go back to 3 years ago, where we couldn't even describe what we wanted to do in three sentences. Oh, sorry, 3 paragraphs, let alone 2 sentences. And I think we wanted the time to be able to figure that out. And I think that's very important. But different business models are different in how they operate. For some people, they need to raise the cash up front, in which case find an investor that understands your stage. For us, it was find the right investor because we'd seen the movie when it wasn't right. And we wanted to make sure that we had folks around the table that we could just say, hey, we screwed up or this didn't work. Because even at our stage, the propensity to make mistakes is pretty high. We're still figuring out things around growth and top of funnel, and we've become so much better than even 3 months ago. But if we have no room to make mistakes, then we have no room to really grow. And if you're not making big mistakes, you're not going to find big growth. And so a lot of that is just trying to figure out the balance in that ecosystem.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because after you do your first successful business, so many think, all right, the next one's just, we learned our lessons, right? We don't have to go through the lessons again. Every new venture is its own learning process. And you go through the same things. Yes, you do some things better because you've already learned them, but some of those things have to be learned again. And as you start to develop out the business, you start to find out what the market really wants. You start to understand what that ideal customer really is. And sometimes it takes you in a direction that you had not planned on. And it means moving away from some of the core things that you originally thought was who we are and where we're going. And it takes a really secure leadership team to say, you know what? This has made us money in the past, but this is not really where the future is going. We have to go this way. Did you find yourself at that crossroad when you're like,
many times?
Yeah,
many times. We always had this dream of wanting to build an end-to-end platform, but we knew we didn't want to start with the sexiest part of it because that was the one that was going to need the most amount of cash. So we had to go figure out how to start a business with the minimum of cash that we had from our last exit, and create a path to being able to not only create working capital because cash is king, but being able to charter a path that would take us back to the original vision. And some of these things were very serendipitous along the way, and some of them were a part of a big picture. But we didn't really know how to go from A to big picture day one. We just knew that was a North Star, and this is what we need to do right now. And then you get very focused quarter. I think the other thing which was really nice pre-investor, and I think it's also really nice post-investor, is that we had an opportunity to think beyond a quarter. And now it's nice that we actually have to think quarter to quarter as well, because it means we have to plan things in a certain way where there is a result that comes back from things that we're doing. And it also allows us to break things into tangible steps rather than giant steps. And we've done a bunch of those giant steps in the past.
All right, this is an unusual question. I've never asked this question before, 600 plus episodes, but I'm going to ask it. We can see in the background, you have young children. I'm assuming you have a family. You exit, right? The wife finally gets a chance to kind of see everything that you put on the line. You won, and now you're like, honey, we're going to do it again, and I'm going to bootstrap this thing. What advice do you have out there for the entrepreneurs that are married, where they have to, get some buy-in from the significant other, and there's a lot on the line?
So, when I did my first company, I wasn't married, so life was very different. But when my wife and I met, right in the beginning, I said to her, "This is going to be a journey. If you're not game for the journey, we should stop this now, because ultimately, the journey is more important than the destination." And it's seen its difficult moments. It's seen its ups and downs. And I think the thing that I have learned is that no matter how turbulent the waters are outside, you got to stay calm at home. Because what you can't do is you can't shake. You need one bit of still to deal with a ton of turbulence. And as an entrepreneur with your team or your family, you have to present calm, irrespective of how turbulent it might be. If you, pardon my French, lose your shit,
yeah,
game's over.
Yeah.
Because then everything starts to become difficult. And a lot of it comes down to, and this is a trick that I think athletes use, but I'm a huge believer in it. And I did this even when I did the triathlon, is you visualize yourself at the end and you're looking back and you're seeing the entire bubbles in the journey. And then you're just taking yourself to the point the day after or the minute after it all becomes calm again. And you've solved the problem, you raised the cash, you've done the IPO, you've done whatever it is. That gives you such a strong sense of not only focus, but purpose, but also calms your mind. Because there's an old Buddhist saying, it's a word called anicca, and it says that everything is impermanent, the good and the bad.
Yeah. I love that. It's almost like having an outside investor, right? You've got to communicate, you got to let them know what's going on, but there's got to be a sense of calm that I've got this handled.
Yeah, and I think as with everything, you have to explain the right amount of information at the right time, and make sure it's passed on correctly as well.
Yeah, I like that. Well, tell me a little bit about the new company, Builder. I've had a chance to look at it, but many of the viewers have not. Give us a little background on it.
So it's a really funny background. So my co-founder and I are both engineers, and in fact, one of our core team, Rohan, as well. So we're 3 engineers trying to build a photo app, and we go give this work to a developer, and he like royally shafts us, and we feel so stupid. But then we think to ourselves, if it's so complicated for us, imagine how hard it is for a small medium business. So we speak to our friends, we sort of do a little bit of homework, and realize it's a bigger problem than we thought. Fast forward a few years, we built a platform that goes right the way from an idea. So all you need is an idea to work with our platform, and it goes all the way through to the idea being built. And then you get the care that you need. So we have a product called Builder Care, which makes sure that whatever you built never goes out of date, because software is like milk, it expires. And then finally, as you need infrastructure, as it's scaling, you move on to Builder Cloud, which is sort of like the virtual cloud provider, which works with all the different cloud providers and make sure that you always get it on budget. It's always cheaper than if you went directly. It's more efficient. And we realized that to be able to deliver these 3 pieces was far more important than delivering any single one. And so when you think about Builder Studio, which goes from idea to digital product, we realized that when we looked at tons and tons of software, 40 to 60% of most software was common. It had login, it had push notifications. We couldn't understand why people were being charged for the same thing all over again, even though it was done 100 times. And so we said, okay, we're going to build a library of common features. We're going to remove all the repetitive processes that humans have to do and replace them by machines. Whether they're intelligent or unintelligent, we don't really care, as long as it removes a repetitive process. And then all the bits that are human creativity, we're going to get a network of people that are already working for other dev shops. So we're going to tie up with these agencies and dev shops and consulting companies. And we're going to grade their capacity and give them work, but as long as they let us select who's going to work on it. So we have the same amount of accuracy as an agency, 142 times more scale, because we work with 142 agencies now, and access to tens of thousands of people that work across them. And so that allows us to not only not charge the customer for things that have already been built before, common features or code, but also build it in such a way that it's more like an assembly process, like an assembly line, rather than an agency type approach. And so we're able to allow people to build just about anything they want, with the exception of VR and gaming. So whether it's a digital transformation app you want to build, whether you want to build the next Uber for babysitters, or whether you want to build a marketplace or e-commerce, we have seen some of the widest and most wonderful products sort of coming to us to get built. And we go from that to allowing it to run in the real world and not going out of date, which is really important for small, medium businesses, because you spend $20, $30, $40, $50,000 building software. So it's a single home for your entire digital solution.
Interesting. So if I want to build an app, I have an app idea. So I come to you and I said, I want an app, and it kind of works like the Uber app,
right?
But, I want to do it for babysitters.
Right.
You basically take the Uber app and the structure of it, the template of it, and I'm going to use a non-technical term here. I'm going to take out all the verbiage related to getting a car, and I'm going to change it where it says car babysitter.
Right.
So
exactly. And think of it like when you order pizza. You go and you order a base, and then you add your toppings to make it unique. So we have multiple bases, including no base. So it's all toppings and all the dough you want and the cheese you want. But effectively, you choose a template, and you don't have to. We tell you for this template, you need this many features, and this is the workflow. It's all online, so it's fully transparent. And then you say, I want this feature, I don't want this feature. And as you add and remove, the price changes. If you're not sure, you hit help, and you get connected to one of our experts in either Los Angeles, London, Delhi, or Tokyo. And they will guide you through the process of speccing so that you get exactly what you want. And that team is designed to push back if something that you want to do, they think is a bad idea.
That never.
So they're on the other side.
That never happens with entrepreneurs. Are you kidding me?
Well, I think we see a lot of people that want to launch a mission to Mars as the first thing, and we try and explain to them maybe it's really important first you can glide in normal air.
Have you been talking to my operations guy? Because he's just in the other room right now, and he's constantly pushing back. He's like, Thor, I don't think you really want to do it this way. Yes, I do. He goes, that's not a good idea. Yeah, we need people around us. So when you actually compile this pizza, how much is pushed back on the client to have to create the content or the stuff around it versus the developers doing their piece? Is there kind of a rule?
Yeah, so we have our product experts do a lot of the heavy lifting. But look, we're trying to pull the idea out of your head.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is about having you do some homework, think through things, figure out what it is you want. We get a lot of folks that want something very rudimentary, and that's really easy for us. And we get a lot of folks that are trying to build something very complicated, and that's not so easy, but it's also not impossible. And our team's job is to basically extract from you, replay it, explain, make sure it translates into spec on the platform, and then the developer network picks that up, and the creator network. So we have developers, designers on the network. They pick it up, and we bring on the best people for that particular job. And all of this is done through machines. So machines choose who works on the project, they select the people, they grade the people, and that means we don't have any of the overhead of trying to manage large teams that are around the world.
And after you pick out your pizza and it's all compiled and the price comes out to X, how close to that number, how can that number change from the original pizza quote?
So we guarantee the price. But what we do is we call it a max price. So we guarantee the maximum price. And if we did it faster, which probably happens between 5 to 10% of the time, you pay less. If we go over because you needed to make more changes or we were just late, we don't charge you a penny more. The only time the price changes is if you add and remove features. But it's very transparent. You'll come in and say, don't want this, I want this, and it'll tell you the net difference.
That is awesome. Because I can't tell you the number of clients that we have that are looking to create, most of it is around apps. And the whole process of just where do I start? Who am I dealing with? What have they done in the past? What is the guarantee if it doesn't work? Because the number of people that start the process, maybe trying to do something that's not smart to do in the first place, or working with a developer that just doesn't know what they're doing. There's a lot of time and energy and money wasted in the process.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is what you said, right? Working with a developer. And really, we think business people need to work with product managers, not with developers. You need the person in the middle that's going to do the translation and then make sure you get what was delivered. And so, we're both demand and supply side, because the only things that we do with our customers is guide and make sure delivery happens. And so a lot of what we've built technology-wise and we keep building is to make sure that we can instrument a successful delivery.
I love it. All right, I'm going to end with we could go on here for hours. This is fascinating. I love the space that you're in. You talked about the North Star, knowing where you're going. You talked about the corrections along the way. How often are you making those corrections?
I think if you're not making corrections every day, and they could be small corrections. But I often tell folks that when you are going from London to Los Angeles, you don't fly straight. You first fly north, then you become a little westward, and eventually you start flying west, then you fly southwards. And so you're always making corrections in that journey: altitude, wind speed, direction. And I think a lot of the importance of being an entrepreneur is seeing feedback as it comes in, and then not being stuck to a particular point of view. I think if it's about being stuck to a point of view, there are other industries you should be in or other jobs that you might be doing. If it's about having the right set of data, but at the same time relying on your gut, then you will forever keep making changes.
Yeah.
Every time you hire someone, you make a change.
Yeah.
You move the tipping balance of the company.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so glad you answered it that way. I had a sneaking suspicion that you were going to answer it that way. That's the answer I was looking for. You've got to be making corrections all the time, figuring out how to make it better, what's not working, what's working, what needs to work better, and looking at the data all the time. I get this question all the time. How often should I be looking at my numbers? At least daily. Maybe if your business is doing X, you might want to look at it every hour. Like every hour, why would I want to do that? Because you want to know what's going on so you can start to make those corrections.
Yes.
So,
and I think it's a fine balance, Thor, between that and having that gut instinct to punch through. Because I think you have to have data refined with what your stomach is telling you, because that's the real reason you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, thank you for joining us today. This has been absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate it. Look forward to having you back on the show.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.